Hello and welcome to the Guardian Football Weekly. So many fans up and down the leagues just staring at remaining fixtures, podcasters saying permutations a lot and just general anxiety at the top and the bottom. We'll begin at Selhurst Park. Palace 0, West Ham 0. Is that a good point for the Hammers or an opportunity missed? Palace weren't as hungover as Spurs fans feared. Both had chances, but it means it's still very tight at the bottom. And then to the EFL, Cover up, Ipswich, Millwall and Saint, all with a chance to join them. Playoffs for the other along with Middlesbrough and one of Derby, Wrexham or Hull. League One pretty much sorted, barring a final playoff place and a big old bun fight to avoid the final relegation spot. Exeter's keeper with a last-minute equaliser to keep them in touch. In League Two, I'm too nervous to talk about it. Bromley are up, MK Dons should join them. It's in Cambridge's hands too, while at the bottom, a 99th minute winner for Harrogate means 5 teams fighting it out. There's the wild final winner-takes-all game between York and Rochdale in the National League. Just the 212 points between them going into the final game. There's some exciting Timo Werner news, a staggering Barney Ronne error to correct from yesterday, and some excited New Yorkers. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Barry Glendenning, welcome.
What did you call me?
I think I called you what your TalkSport jingle is, Barry Glendenning. But I'll start again if you want.
No,
Barry
it's all right.
Welcome.
I've been called a lot worse, Max.
Whoever you are, whatever you... I don't know what you're doing here today, but welcome.
I'm just hopeful that this Barry Glendenning you speak of knows more about the EFL than his near namesake, Barry Glendenning.
From Not the Top 20, George Elek, hello.
Hello, Max.
And welcome, Sanny Rudravajhala.
Hello, Max.
Let's begin then at the bottom of the Premier League. Crystal Palace 0, West Ham 0. That point means, for West Ham, means that Wolves are relegated. But in the final relegation spot, Tottenham have 31 from 33, West Ham 33 from 33, Forest 36 from 33, and Leeds should be saved 39 from 33. I mean, it wasn't a classic, Barry. Do you think West Ham will be happy with a point or not?
I think they'll be happier with a point than they would be without any points. But
Good insight to that.
Players seemed quite upset after the game that they hadn't taken all 3. I thought a draw was probably fair enough. Agent Brennan Johnson, I think, did his bit for Nottingham Forest. He had a couple of good chances that he didn't put away. I think the draw was... It's a result. Spurs will look at it and go, well, it could have been worse. It's one of very few things that went well for them over the course of the weekend's fixtures. It wasn't a great game, but the result is what everyone's going to be talking about, and what everyone's going to be talking about is what it means for Spurs. So it means Spurs are not in as awful a position as they could be, but they are still very much in a bad position.
I've never been so invested as when Jefferson Lerma slipped over. I've never thought about whether Jefferson Lerma could slip over or not. I think Tati was running through and I was like, oh no, please don't do that. And I suppose, George, like, what's the moment for West Ham? Like that Mavropanos header, that's the moment. I think if I was a West Ham fan, I'd be like, oh, just like half a foot either side.
It was like the Havertz header the day before for Arsenal, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure. If you're a West Ham fan, it's one of those weird ones where the point is obviously decent, but you look at the way that the game went. There's obviously the disallowed goal as well. That could have, been obviously it was correctly disallowed, but it could have been a pretty damaging defeat. So you come away with a point, but wondering if it could have been more than that. But a 2-point gap after 33 games. I think for West Ham, they're in a decent position now, and it's up to Spurs to serve it up to them. So, not a great MNF edition, it's fair to say. I think most of those people who tuned in to watch as neutrals probably regretted their decisions. But yeah, probably West Ham coming away with it with a kind of frustrated, but knowing that a point's not the worst thing.
It could be the shortest part one ever of Football Weekly. Sanny, West Ham's fixtures. So we can go to the fixtures. West Ham have Everton at home, Brentford away, Arsenal at home, Newcastle away, Leeds at home. And Tottenham have Wolves away, Villa away, Leeds at home, Chelsea away, Everton at home. And I know as we go through this pod, like so many of just, here are the remaining fixtures. And it's always, you never know how the Oppo are going to play. But what do you reckon?
It's hard to give an answer that's completely unbiased because, like most listeners to the pod, I'm invested in the hilarity of Spurs being in the Championship, and of course, with an EFL hat on, that would be a curious thought experiment that will soon maybe become reality. So, yeah, West Ham having Arsenal, that one jumps out. But then West Ham facing Leeds when Leeds likely are safe, and also Brentford in there as well means, well, yeah, there's some points that could certainly be won there. I mean, that final Leeds game, they'll be pretty happy, won't they? For Spurs, yeah, I don't know. I think I'm loading up their fixtures. And by the way, whilst I feel loading up their fixtures, the only thing I would add on the actual game itself was my highlights was my colleagues at Sky Sports Premier League describing Dean Henderson as Jordan Henderson with a fine save. That was probably that was the most entertaining thing in that game, I think. Yeah, I suppose Chelsea still have a lot to go for, that penultimate game for Spurs, and that's a big derby, isn't it, as well?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's very hard to tell. I can see by the puzzled look in your face. You're like, I think that's all of us, isn't it?
I still think teams with little or nothing to play for will try harder against Spurs than they would against West Ham. I honestly believe everyone is invested in sending them down because it would be objectively funny. Obviously not funny for Spurs, but funny for everyone else.
Yeah, but I also did wonder, George, would Crystal Palace go into last night's game thinking it would be better next season for West Ham to be in the Premier League than a rejuvenated Tottenham? Like, is that an extra place, or is that thinking far too much into it?
I think it's always so difficult this time of the season to work out who's motivated and who isn't motivated and how much impact that has on things. I think it's got to be a bit of a leap for Palace to be looking ahead to next season and thinking who's going to be a better opposition for them in terms of what they want to be doing. I'll be impressed if they manage that, especially with, they'd have been looking at the league table and thinking if we can win both of our games in hand, then suddenly we're going to be within touching distance of the European places, which has to be the main motivation. So, I can't really see that being the case. I think with Spurs have got Wolves next, which on paper looks the game that you would want if you had to have an away game coming up. But despite the fact that Wolves, their relegation has been mathematically confirmed, they've known this for a long time. And my hunch is that the way they're playing and the fact that they're closing this gap on Burnley means they're going to be pretty motivated not to finish bottom. So, I kind of agree. No easy games, but I'd be surprised if that came into the reason why last night's showing was pretty poor.
Yeah, it's probably just my brain working overtime on this. Interesting point that Nuno has managed 4 of the bottom 5. Forest go to Sunderland, then go to Chelsea, then have Newcastle at home, then go to Man United and play Bournemouth at home. So they're not, apart from Newcastle who are on terrible form and Chelsea who are on terrible form. Okay, they're fine, aren't they? You just don't know, do you? And if they have a bad weekend, then suddenly they're dragged back into it. Brighton play Chelsea tonight in, I guess, the race for the Europa League spots, which could be quite fun. And on your 6th and 7th screens on the final day of the Premier League season, there is just 3 points between 6th and 12th, and a Brighton win takes them above Chelsea in the table. So look, we can talk about that on Thursday.
The game that I just can't wait for is the Sunday 17th of May, 3:00, the Chelsea Spurs game, which just feels like it's going to be incredible soap opera drama no matter what happens, with Chelsea possibly having the chance to relegate Tottenham, with Chelsea's ridiculous situation at that club at the moment, where imagine if Spurs managed to get a result at Stamford Bridge that kept them up and what that would do. It just seems like incredible drama no matter what happens.
It's all so terrifying, isn't it? It's just so much easier in the middle of the season when none of it seems to really matter. Anyway, before we end part 1, Baz, you and Nikki interviewed Gigi Buffon the other day. Football Weekly's Instagram account has been putting out pixelated photos, which are obviously Gigi Buffon in them for quite a while. But why did he talk to you, and what did you talk about?
The reason Gigi spoke to us and other people is because he has a sort of autobiography / memoir / musing on the meaning of life book out called Saved. I think it was published in Italy last year. It's been translated into English. I think our old pal James Horncastle does the audio book. And he was just in England to do a bit of publicity for it. And he was interviewed by Donald McRae. But myself and Nikki softened him up ahead of his interrogation with Don. And he was, or he presumably still is, a very nice man, very charming, very Italian, very good looking. He can pull off wearing shades indoors in a manner I could only dream of. And I managed to crowbar in the fact that I had done a half marathon 2 days previously. And he gave me a pat on the shoulder, having first sort of looked me up and down and pointedly paused when his gaze fell upon my beer belly, and congratulated me. So I've made a friend for life there. He's probably forgotten who I am already. But yeah, it was a really interesting chat. And Nicky did most of the heavy lifting, to be honest. And Gigi, he speaks quite good English, but he isn't confident enough in his English to do an interview in English. So we did it with the help of a translator. Watching her in action was something else as well. Wow. And but I suspect once it's all been sliced and diced by our top editing team, it will make for a very good video.
Yeah, out on the Guardian's Football Weekly's YouTube channel. And while you're there, like and subscribe, of course. And that'll do for part one. Part two, we'll get into the Championship. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. So Coventry are up, and we all want to know what Richard Keys thinks. In a rare moment where I agree with him, he says, it's 3:19 a.m. This is one of the great nights of my life. I remember 1967 so well. Isn't it daft what football means to us? Don't anybody ever anywhere underestimate that. And yes, I've had a couple. 3 champagne bottle emojis, 3 blue hearts. But it did take me to watching a film of.
Did you see what came before that?
Oh, I didn't see what came before it. Oh.
He tweeted 3 identical photos of a glass of red wine held up in front of the TV with a bare leg in shot as well. So there you go.
Okay, I've missed the good stuff, clearly. Yeah, it just shows that I didn't go to his account, but someone, chucked that in the script for us. But it did take me to a great film of the 1967 promotion. And that was the last time they were promoted to the top flight because they stayed in the top flight for so long, to 01. And kids carried over their heads and sat on the touchline for that game. Jimmy Hill was the manager. And fast forward to Friday, and it was a Bobby Thomas header in the 84th minute at Ewood Park. And this from Pudsey says, can you please give the Coventry story due prominence? Administration, points deduction, homelessness twice, down to League Two, shit owners, now back in the Premier League. A lot of it on a shoestring budget, beats any Disney millions-backed fairy tale into a cocked hat. And that is fair, George, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, this is an absolutely incredible story because, you mentioned the key points there, but Coventry City were a mainstay of the top flight for a long time. Football's generally cyclical. Teams generally, when they have a slide, will return back to where they come from, but it's normally a bit quicker and it's less dramatic than this because there was a time where Coventry's existence was kind of shrouded in uncertainty. They dropped all the way down to League Two. An incredible story in terms of what Mark Robins did at the club. Which has to be one of the most impressive kind of one-man jobs, one team jobs that a manager's done in the last couple of decades to take over a club in that situation. As you say, had to ground share with Northampton Town, had to ground share with Birmingham City. Even when they moved into their new stadium, that wasn't simple because the club didn't own it, and there were big issues with the owners at the time, Sisu. So even though this isn't a case of a big club falling down the leagues and then a wealthy businessman coming in and buying the club and pumping money in, Mark Robins had to work in a really difficult environment with a fan base who are consistently clashing with the ownership group, and understandably so. And even in recent times, like Coventry's recent history since returning back to the Championship has been littered with heartbreak, really. That think back to that dramatic Championship playoff final when Luton went up in the most unbelievable of circumstances after Tom Lockyer had collapsed on the pitch and they won on penalties. You think back to that FA Cup semi-final against Manchester United where they thought they'd won it at the death only for VAR to intervene and they lost on penalties there. You think back to last season against Sunderland in the Championship playoff semi-finals where they were beaten again in heartbreaking late circumstances by Sunderland, as Barry will remember. It hasn't been easy. And every time I was at the EFL Awards on Sunday night, and Frank Lampard won Championship Manager of the season. And what was great is that he really didn't make it about himself. He basically made it about everyone apart from himself. In terms of he one of the first people he mentioned up on stage was Mark Robins and the job that Robins had done, which is a real touch of class, really, when you consider that how rare that is for managers to basically praise the work of those that came before them. And he was in tears on the pitch when interviewed after the game at Blackburn, which sealed their promotion with a late goal from Bobby Thomas to draw the game 1-1. I think the enormity of the history of what he has achieved, he feels that quite clearly, and he even referenced his achievements as a player at Chelsea to say that this really did kind of mean a similar amount to him as that. So it's an incredible story. It's come through some really good decision making. Have to give huge credit to their owner Doug King, who brought them a couple of years ago, made the incredibly difficult decision to sack a manager in Mark Robins, who was so popular at the club and had achieved so much. Made the decision with his staff to appoint Frank Lampard at a time where neutrals, EFL podcasters, scoffed and said, "What is he doing? Like, this is a ridiculous decision."
Football Weekly podcasters.
Honestly, the only recent managerial appointment I can think of that was met with such derision was Wayne Rooney at Plymouth Argyle, and obviously that went terribly. But in this case, it just couldn't have gone any better. He took over last season at a time where they were threatened by relegation, led them into the playoffs. And then this time around, they've gone and won the league and done so by improving the players they have at the club. The recruitment has always been spot on, but crucially, they give players time to settle. So many clubs bring in a player. If they don't do it in 6 months, they're out the door again in the next window. But at Coventry, players like Efren Mason-Clark and Ellis Sims and Milan Van Oek, they improve season on season and are given the opportunity to do it. So, yes, this is a way to achieve success through incremental strides forward, building as a club season on season. It shows what a good owner can do. And we're going to miss them in the EFL because they've been a mainstay, but delighted for their fans at their back where they believe that they belong, and where lots of football fans think that Coventry City should be.
So they are top of the league. They're not quite champions yet because Ipswich could win all their games. They could lose all their games, but they've got 86 points. Then, Sanny, we look at the automatic. So Ipswich have 76 points from 42. Millwall, 76 from 43. Southampton on this incredible run, 75 from 43. And it would be a stretch now for Middlesbrough to do it. They're on 73 from 43. Ipswich drew with Middlesbrough 2-2, got a late... I've seen them not given penalties to get a draw there. Kim Helberg, the Middlesbrough manager, saying Ipswich are good at getting penalties. They've had 4 more than anyone else in the Championship, 9 penalties. But they are in the box seat, Ipswich. 3 games in 6 days, Charlton away, West Brom away, then Southampton at home, which is enormous. Do you think they will do it?
Right, so without delving into the fixtures other than that Southampton game, having seen Southampton demolish Wrexham 5-1, I was blown away with how good they were. Absolutely, that's the depth that they've got. Considering the fighting on the front of the FA Cup as well, and that's an extra complication. But yeah, the fact they've got Ipswich, I kind of intuitively feel Southampton going to take it. Just they were so good, and I think if they were like that since the start of the season, they'd be up. But then the maths and the logic and George is the more logical man than me, I think. Might point out that the maths are against it. I suppose the fact that they've got this FA Cup semi, logically you'd say, right, well that's too much to have to deal with as well. However, they comfortably swapped out half the team for that Wrexham game from the FA Cup game, and get dispatched Wrexham quite easily. So I actually do think Southampton will do it. Now, whether that's actually mathematically realistic, I don't know. But based on what I've seen and based on how they play, because Leo Cienza gets the headlines, and Tom Fellows as well, like an old-fashioned right midfielder beating a man and all the rest of it. But someone like Flynn Downs playing in the middle, although he hasn't played much in the last 2 games, it's been integral since he came back in, just defensively mopping things up, getting things going, popping up with some goals as well. Across the park, they've got a whole team like that. And so based on that, I really do think they could go up. And about, 8 weeks ago, we were saying Middlesbrough are all but up, and that feels like a really stupid kind of call between us. But yeah, their drop off has been something else. So yeah, I know Ipswich have this game in hand, but I do think Southampton have the chance to take some points off them. I think Southampton will do it.
So you've got Southampton then and Ipswich and Millwall the other side, George, which is Stoke away, Leicester away, Oxford at home. Leicester fighting for their lives as well. So are you with Sanny? Do you think it will be Southampton, or it's just impossible to tell?
It's funny because there seems to be this kind of idea that it's going to be Southampton, but if you look at the bookies odds, for example, which are normally a pretty good unbiased look at what is likely and have a much kind of more accurate chance rather than us and what we feel, less recency bias. Ipswich are still heavy odds on favourites to finish in the top 2. That's not to say it will happen, but it's to say that they are still the likeliest to happen. And I do think, even though Southampton were obviously brilliant in that game against Wrexham off the back of the Arsenal game, whatever happens against Manchester City in that FA Cup semi-final is going to have an impact, but ahead of what is a huge game next Tuesday night against Ipswich. So, I haven't been overly impressed. I've got in trouble for saying this the other day after the Old Farm derby. I haven't been overly impressed by Ipswich. They look to me to be a solid team that, are nowhere near as good as the team that came up a couple of years ago, despite probably having better players. And maybe that's just because of the high standards set by Ipswich. And they were good against Borough, despite the fact that it was a pretty controversial penalty that yielded the point. They were the better team, certainly at 0-0 before Borough scored against a run of play. So Ipswich most likely, but it definitely feels like it's all to play for, and it's going to be an exciting finish. And that Tuesday night game next week is going to be appointment viewing.
Just we will get cancelled by Millwall fans if we don't explicitly say that Millwall do actually have the same number of points as Ipswich and are above Southampton. And interestingly, this is where I think it gets really good, because Millwall's fixtures are pretty conducive to them getting second place, because they go to Stoke and then they've got a trip to Leicester, which will obviously be pretty toxic, and then another side, George's Oxford at home. So they're playing Stoke on the beach and two sides, battling relegation. So in theory, there's nothing stopping them getting 9 points. Southampton and Ipswich take some points off each other, and Millwall finish second. And so the fixture list and the fixture calendar has completely set it up for Millwall, albeit Millwall have been at their best when they've been playing games kind of against their rivals, like we saw the victory against Middlesbrough. But it is, in a way, kind of falls right into their hands. Millwall Premier League could well happen.
It is fun to watch these guys. I watched the highlights of Southampton's late win at Swansea on the sort of local club TV, and local commentators at this stage of the season are just absolutely, just totally partisan, just everything. They're just so much, whatever side of its relegation promotion, just so much fun. So then you've got the final playoff place, George, which is Hull on 69, Wrexham 67, Derby 66. Who do you think is most likely to sneak in?
Hull are still definitely in the driving seat, but they're not playing particularly well. They go to Leicester this evening and could relegate them, pending a West Brom points deduction if that comes. But they look in the best position. I'm off to Oxford Wrexham tonight, which feels like just a must-win game for both teams. And if Wrexham win that and Hull drop points, then they'll put themselves in a decent position, albeit their fixtures are tricky between now and the end of the season. So tonight feels like a really big one for them. And then Derby are kind of the team that won't go away, really. A 1-0 win over Oxford on a Saturday, with Hull dropping points, kind of keeps them in the conversation, and they travel to Norwich, who will feel like their defeat against Ipswich a couple of weeks ago kind of ended their slim hopes of a playoff push, but they beat Bristol City away on Saturday, so it's still very much that they haven't downed tools as of yet, and have been so impressive since Philippe Clement took over. So yeah, Hull definitely the most likely, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if either Wrexham or Derby go on a run and manage to leapfrog them.
At the bottom of the Championship, Sheffield Wednesday obviously down. Leicester really look done, don't they? 41 points. They've obviously had a points deduction. 41 from 43. Oxford 44 from 43. And then a bit of a jump to the teams outside of the relegation zone. A small jump. Okay, George, I'll be kind to you. And you have a game in hand over Blackburn. Blackburn have 49 from 44. West Brom 49 from 43. Catching Charlton would be quite extraordinary, 50 from 43. The Leicester story, Sanny, is interesting because they've had this points deduction, but even without that, right, they would be just one place above the relegation zone. Oh no, they'd be in it on 47 points, forgive me. And how have they been so bad? Because their squad isn't that bad, is it?
No, it isn't. And so then you've got to look at the culture, really. And I don't think that comes back to this season. This is subsequent seasons, isn't it? Premier League now dropping into League One is quite dire. We've seen protests from the fans groups before about investment not put in the right place. Recruitment has been bad. Every game now, seemingly every game, there are videos by the fans of interactions with the players. There was one at Sheffield Wednesday where The youngsters got their hands out wanting a high five or a low five or a side five, and everyone's got their cans on their ears walking past. A few have stopped, a few of the ones who've been there a while maybe, and it contrasts with big stars, big teams, making time for the kids because they know they're not big time Charlies. And I know that's kind of a kind of cheap dig, but I think it is a bit symptomatic when you've got Harry Winks post match the other day. Getting stick on the sidelines at Portsmouth away, deservedly so, and he's telling the fans to F off. Like, that's not a good look, and that's not ever justifiable, regardless of where you kind of stand, because the fans are the ones who pay you wages and all that. Post match at Pompey, fans are all telling not fit to wear the shirt. It's awful. I don't know how you come back from that, really. I saw them at Stoke a while ago, and that was Gary Rowett's first game. And he's kind of the right man for this situation, but it's just too many moving parts. I feel like I think he's trying to do something here with players. Some of them just don't want to be there. That's my kind of look from the outside in.
I definitely. I mean, I take what Tanny's saying, and I think there is a warning here around manager fit and the way that people think of managers. Well, I would say, and I said it at the time when he was appointed. It's not just after signing. Like, I think Rowett is a manager that I have a lot of respect for. He managed my club. He kept us up last season, but he's just completely the wrong profile of manager for this squad of players. Like Max, when you said, this is a good squad, like I would say that Leicester's squad in terms of actual talent is one of the best 3 squads in the whole division, let alone shouldn't be down there. Like, you look at, you've got players like Abdul Fatawu and Jordan James, Sefi Mavididi, Harry Winks, even like Patson Daka and Jordan Ayew. Like, these are guys who belong in a completely different stratosphere to the bottom end of a championship table. Like, Jordan James just won the Championship Young Player of the Season because he individually has had an amazing season. He will be a Premier League footballer or a top tier footballer very soon. He's a brilliant player. But if you've got a group of players who have a massive technical advantage to most of the opposition, what are you doing appointing 2 managers in Martí Cifuentes and Gary Rowett who basically play a style of football that says, it's all about out of possession shape. We're not going to give you any freedom on the ball. We're not going to have much of the ball. We're going to look to defend and score from set pieces. It doesn't make sense, and especially when you consider that 2 seasons ago, loads of these players were in a team that won the championship playing for Enzo Maresca, whose style of football was like a heavy possession, aggressive out of possession, high press. Like, what made them think that these were the right decisions? I can understand with Rowett, the idea is like, oh God, we need a firefighter. Let's go and get someone who supposedly guarantees safety. But you've got to look at squad fit and player profile fit. And it doesn't surprise me at all that these players who, know they're not going to be playing in League One next season are looking at this and thinking, you know what, I don't really fancy this. Like, this isn't the way that we want to play, and it's not conducive to getting us to win games of football.
I think it might be a kind of a Spurs effect here in that these players are so good, brackets up to a point, that they do consider a relegation scrap in the Championship to be way beneath them, and they're not putting in the effort. I noticed that Leicester have announced an end-of-season charity match to mark the 10th anniversary of their Premier League title win, and a lot of their fans seem to have said that that's a bit tone-deaf to be announcing that. 5,000 to 1 it's called, which is probably the odds against them staying up at the moment as well.
Yeah, just on Rowett, I don't disagree with George on his tactical and kind of philosophical position as a manager. But I think in a situation we've got players who aren't motivated or seemingly don't really seem to have pride in the shirt, having an ex-player who's kind of been there, done it. And I know that's a bit reductionist. Maybe it's a bit beneath Guardian Football Weekly's highbrow thinking on this. But I do think there is something in that. I think there is something, especially when you need someone who can connect with the fans, who can give you that impetus, at least to attempt to, and then it's down to the players. I mean, and clearly it hasn't worked, obviously. He's only won once. But that was where I was thinking with this, like, yes, okay, supposed firefighter, but knows what it's like to be successful in a Leicester City shirt. Some of those players do as well. A lot of them actually don't, and have spent a lot of their career losing in most recent seasons, at least. And there's a couple of things going around on social media, like Leicester had a new training complex this season. and it's like huge. It's incredible. It's like, because that's the sort of thing that's PSR free, right? You can invest in that, and it's an investment and all that, and it dwarfs most. It dwarfs Bromley Stadium. They'll be in the same division next season. But that goes to show you mismanagement, which is ultimately what it is, on and off the pitch, leads to this situation. Some of those players shouldn't be there anymore, but then this whole situation is entirely of the making of the hierarchy above them who've kind of sown all those seeds.
Do you give Oxford any hope, George? How are you feeling?
Yes, not great.
Yes,
pretty nervous ahead of tonight. I mean, the thing is, because Blackburn have played this extra game, and because Blackburn play away at Sheffield United on Wednesday night, it basically means that Oxford can go into Wrexham tonight knowing that a defeat will make it almost impossible. Not impossible, because we can win our last 2 games of the season. If Blackburn lose both of theirs, then we will overtake them. But what I keep saying to Oxford fans who are telling me that it's over is that if we beat Wrexham tonight, a game for which Oxford are favourites to win, and then Blackburn don't beat Sheffield United tomorrow night, then we go into a home game against Sheffield Wednesday knowing that a win will take us out of the relegation zone going into the final day. So it's not over, but it's not looking great. But tonight it's huge. It's the first time I've woken up on the day of a game, which I'm going to, feeling genuinely quite sick, because either I'm going to go to bed.
Such a funny feeling, isn't it?
Delirious,
I've got that about the
or I'm going to be crying.
Yeah. It's so funny. This thing that we do, it's not good for us. That pit of your stomach, and there'll be so many listeners supporting so many teams feeling like that.
Am I right in thinking that West Brom's points deduction has to be resolved before the end of this season? Is that right?
I think we'll find out relatively soon. It would be a bit of a strange situation if Leicester are relegated tonight and then reprieved tomorrow. But let's see.
And I mean, maybe it's not worth speculating. Is their punishment likely to be? Do we know what points people are speculating and what it might be, George?
I think the speculation, and this is purely speculation, is kind of 2 or maybe 3 or 3 with 1 suspended, so therefore being 2. I don't think it's going to make a big difference. They're playing incredibly well under James Morrison. I think there's probably an element here where the EFL just, what they don't want to happen is for any relegated teams to feel harshly done by about when it's been implemented, especially given that Leicester have had,
of course, a points deduction
implemented this season. So I'd be really surprised if we don't get a resolution in some way sooner rather than later. But I don't know anything.
Okay, that'll do for part 2. Part 3, we'll do Leagues 1 and League 2. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. We are live in New York on July the 16th at the Bowery Ballroom, theguardian.com/Football Weekly Live. If you'd like some tickets, apparently they are selling fast. Martin writes, Max, Barry and gang, my friend Victor, to whom Barry steadfastly refused to wish a happy birthday earlier this year, were in such a rush to buy tickets to the live show in New York City that in a flurry of undelivered texts and Ticketmaster snafus. What are snafus? I should know this.
They're not good, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
It's not Fubar, but it's not far off of Fubar, I think.
Do you know, George? What do we know? What these
snafu's like a kind of like a hiccup of bigger, like a mistake.
Situation normal, all fouled up.
Or
got it. Okay,
effed up.
A big hiccup. Is that burp? I don't know.
Right. We ended up with 4 rather than our desired 2 tickets. We're now looking forward to implementing dynamic pricing on our remaining 2 tickets. We'll be taking off starting at $2,000 each. Hope you can advertise the availability in your upcoming million messages trying to sell out the Bowery Ballroom. There you go, Martin. Alexander says, Alex here from the Lower East Side. Your go-to for pastrami knishes. God, I really do not do myself any favours with the New York locals, New York City accents and attitudes. I'm thrilled to know you'll be in town this summer. I've already scooped up my tickets. Can't wait for you to be stateside. I've been listening for almost 20 years. While I've joined you on precisely 0 of your lives' milestones, you've been with me for mine. Episodes of Football Weekly playing at my wedding, in the delivery room of my first son's birth, during my dad's funeral procession. No, I'm kidding. That's all rubbish. But I have been tuned in since before Barry. Was there a before Barry?
There is no before Barry.
Yeah.
I was on the first episode.
Yeah. There we go. Anyway, he says, I'm delighted that you'll be here. Thrilled to help in any way I can. Blimey, Alex, I don't know what you're offering for that, but fluffers for the show. Anyway, do come along, everybody. Right, League One, Lincoln.
I'd say, Max, we might need buffers more than fluffers.
Yeah, okay. Lincoln champions of League One, 94 points. Cardiff up on 85 and confirmed, Sanny, because Stockport didn't beat Exeter. And what we all want to see was the Exeter keeper, Jack Bycroft, scoring in the 96th minute in a 3-all thriller. And it could be vital for Exeter, and we'll get to that. But it was a brilliant moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm delighted you've started this with that because my wife hates sports, right? She hates football.
Same.
But if I ask her what's my favourite thing in football, she will say without hesitation, goalkeepers coming up for corners. Just the sight of it's great. And then the goalkeeper scoring from a corner, the best thing ever. The fact Exeter had like somebody filming from a perfect angle and they put it on the socials really, really soon afterwards. It looks so good. But the best bit about Exeter's equaliser was the fact that moments earlier they'd won a corner, it came in, Bycroft won the header, the keeper pulled off an incredible save to tip it over the bar. It goes for another corner, and he scores from that corner.
Yes. That's great. I haven't seen that bit.
Which was just absolutely amazing. Because the first header's great, and you think, wow. And then you see the second one, you're like, get this guy up for corners every week. You know, this guy's incredible. So, yeah, that was a just amazing moment. And, yeah, Exeter, yeah, we'll get to them. And yeah, it did all mean that Cardiff were up. It's weird as well because the touchline reporter for ITV talking to the Cardiff players afterwards was like, "Did you see what happened? The goalkeeper scored." And we as fans would be like, "What? We're promoted because the goalkeeper scored?" And they were like, "All right, great, cheers, good for him." Like, no, come on, buy into this more. So yeah, great for Cardiff. A wonderful way for it to happen for the neutral. And yeah, Barry Murphy, he's completed the mission, right, which was coming to Cardiff, beleaguered, with the players we've got, bring in a load of youth and get the job done. And he's done it. You know, for a long time we were thinking they would win the league. And, you know, Skubala as Lincoln have just, you know, blitzed that. But yeah, fair play, well done. I suspect they might need a bit of improvement in the squad depth, but as we've seen with the teams that are beleaguered in the Championship, that a well-run club with a solid 11 can do very well. So congratulations to Cardiff, well done BBM. He's kind of, I was on the fence a little bit from his last kind of managerial first team role, which was, you know, watched a lot of him at Rochdale, and that didn't particularly end well. He'd ended the classic work under Pep Guardiola at City before then going back into coaching there, and he's got that on his CV. So you think, right, come on, you've got to hit the ground running here. You've got a big club, and he's done it. You know, fair play to him.
The playoffs situation then, George, Bolton, Bradford and Stockport look pretty much there. And then in Stevenage have 68 points. Plymouth 66, Luton 65, Huddersfield 64. So who do you think might nick that last one? Plymouth have gone on this amazing run, right? Luton have picked up a bit, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I mean, they won't thank me for saying it, but I'm not confirming Bradford's spot in the top 6 quite yet, just because tonight they host Plymouth Argyle, and if Argyle win that game, Bradford's next game after that is against Bolton, and they travel to Exeter on final day, who, you know, could well be needing something from that in order to stay up. So it's not, obviously if Bradford beat Argyle tonight, it's done. They're in the top 6 and that's sorted. But if they do get beaten this evening, then it's going to be very, very nervous for them. Stevenage will be incredibly frustrated that they conceded as late as they did against Lincoln. They were so good that day. Like, Alex Revell's doing an absolutely phenomenal job. Lincoln are clearly the underdog story in League One this season, but for Revell to have them have Stevenage as consistent as they are, so good defensively, they've got a game against Barnsley this evening that if they can win that, it'll put them in a pretty commanding position too. Luton will feel incredibly frustrated that they weren't able to. They came back from 2-0 down against Mansfield to draw 2-2, but had loads of chances in the last half an hour and couldn't quite get over the line. And then what about Huddersfield, who in their last 3 games have been leading in injury time? They conceded a goal to make it 3-3 in 90 plus 11 against a 10-man Bolton on the weekend. Prior to that, they conceded a 95th minute equaliser, and then prior to that it was another 90 plus 11 also to make it 3-3 in their last three games.
It's not fair.
And if they hadn't conceded any of those goals, they'd be sixth. So you've got to feel for Huddersfield Town fans. Any fans of theirs that leave the game early and don't check the results will probably think they're in the playoffs. So it's really tight. I think Stevenage are so solid that I think they will get over the line. But as I say, it wouldn't surprise me at all that if Argyle beat Bradford tonight, and that's a big if and a big ask, then it may be 2 spots available, not just 1.
There must be a Huddersfield Town fan who's left those games early, right?
Oh, yeah.
All 3 of them.
Of course.
And by the time we got to the 3rd one, like, not again. Can't believe it.
Yeah. That's incredible. Bottom of it, then Northampton are down. Port Vale aren't down, but are basically down. They'd have to win all their games in Wimbledon, lose their remaining 2. Rotherham are down, despite being above Port Vale because they played more games. And then you have the bun fight. Exeter, that point means they're on 48. Wimbledon on 50. Leyton Orient 51. Burton and Peterborough 52. Are there any surprises down there, Sanny?
Well, can we just mention on Rotherham? So Lee Clark, when he was appointed, we were at an EFL pod, and I held my tongue on the fact that he steered a club, my team, Bury, with a side designed to try and get into the Championship to their worst ever finish and was sacked. But one of the things at the time is bemoaning was not having real men in the side. And but in his defence here at Rotherham, he said he'd come from South Sudan, or I think, Sudan. He'd come from the Sudanese league to Rotherham. He's come out and said that they've got players calling in sick. Like he said, they had a player call in sick. They made him come in, and then ended up training. He's got players who genuinely don't want to be there and are not playing for the shirt whatsoever, to the point where they're not even turning up. It's like an incredible situation. He even said that the previous manager, Matt Hamshaw, who you might recall, formerly assistant, is a Rotherham fan as well, was doing like Rotherham themed quizzes in lockdown over Zoom and stuff. He mentioned, the previous manager got sacked because these players didn't play for him, and he loved the club. And it is incredible that a club that, traditionally are yo-yoing between the Championship and League One seem to have amassed a set of players who literally won't turn up to play, which is just incredibly frustrating, whoever you are as manager. And it's Rotherham's centenary celebrations this summer. They've got a charity game they're going to be doing and all sorts. And some of those players they're bringing back, would be thinking, what the hell's going on here? You've got the great New York Stadium and all that, and they're into League Two, which is a mess.
You'd never conceive of a footballer taking a sickie. Like, of course it probably happens. It's just the image of it, just, putting on a voice and going, I feel a bit unwell. I can't, I'll work from home today. It just sort of got a funny image, isn't it?
It's probably a HR minefield, isn't it? If you are actually poorly, but you know that no one will believe you and you drag yourself in. But yeah.
Interesting. So then how do you see it, Sanny, then Exeter have a lot to do, right? Still,
they do, but you feel like the momentum, and also the fact that goal difference is 10 better than Wimbledon, and it's a 2-point gap there. That feels important. Wimbledon, I think, are everyone's second team in their heart somewhere, right? Given their history, and they're doing so well to be where they are competing. Given they had so many seasons before relegation, we're just battling to stay up, and you're like, come on, get relegated, have some positivity. And it's really hard because they're welcoming new investment potentially in the future, because there's only so far a fan-owned model can take you, but an Exeter in that similar sort of situation, so it's very tough. I feel like Leyton Orient, given the players they've got, and Richie Wellens as manager, they've been so entertaining over the years. I feel like they should kind of stay up, especially where they were last season, how things kind of came awry. Unstuck for them, but yeah, no one's guaranteed a place in this division, but I can't call it.
Top of League Two then. Bromley are up, 84 points from 44. MK Dons, 82 from 44. The Mighty U's, 78 from 43. Salford, 77 from 44. Notts County, 76. Swindon, 75. We've got Grimsby tonight. George, we should start with Bromley and how big an achievement this is for them to get over the line and get promoted.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. An amazing achievement for a club to come up in the way they did. They came up through the National League playoffs. We're used to teams that come up through the National League who then get straight towards the top end of League Two, being effectively maximising the looser spending rules that used to exist in the National League. But with Bromley, that's not necessarily the case. They're just in Andy Woodman. They've got a manager who has a very clear style of play, which is pretty attritional but very, very effective. Very good from set pieces, very direct, and they recruit to play that system. They were written off by some as being, possible relegation candidates before the season started, but Andy Woodman has always been steadfast in telling the fans and telling the players that this was a season where he wanted to get promoted, and they've achieved that. It's an amazing achievement by him. It's going to be interesting to see how they get on in League One next season. I always think teams that are punching above their weight, but doing so playing that more kind of direct style, it's normally easier to do so because you are doing something that requires less kind of innate ability and is more focused on physical ability and being well drilled. And in Woodburn, they've got a manager who clearly is very adept at doing that. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they surprise a few people next season too. And now it's just a title race because they'll want to win the league, but they've got a really tough game against Salford coming up ahead of the weekend, and Cambridge hosts Grimsby, where obviously if you win that tonight, then you'll be in this title race as well. And MK Dons hosting Tranmere on Saturday should be an opportunity for them to win promotion, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if MK Dons do go on and win the league.
Yeah, they've got Tranmere home, Fleetwood away, so they're nice and winnable. We drew at Bromley on Thursday, had a couple of amazing chances in the first half, but they really came at us in the second. There was a goalmouth scramble at injury time that had me basically vomiting with terror as it was happening.
Max, is our old pal Ryan Loft still at Cambridge?
No. Where did Lofty go? I think he went to Crawley, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
They've got 15,000 strikers. He is.
He's at Crawley.
On your loan, though, so he can always come back for next season.
Yeah, and actually Shane Lavery, who is way too good for League Two, got pulled. He's got really bad hamstrings, and he got injured in that game at Bromley, Northern Ireland International, and so that is a bit of a blow. But we've got Grimsby home tonight, Barrow at home at the weekend. The best home record in the division. Don't say it out loud, Max. Don't, come on, boys, just head on. And at the bottom, it is normally the bottom of League Two. It's two sides are just done, and it's kind of done. But it is extraordinary. Harrogate won 1-0 against Colchester with a 90+9 winner. Brilliantly scrappy League Two goal. And it means the bottom of League Two looks like this. Harrogate have 36 points. Barrow 36. Newport 37. Tranmere, who have a game in hand on everyone else, 37. And Crawley 38. And just this pressure, because it is hard to get out of the National League, which we'll get to in a second. It is just huge for these five teams.
Yeah, and it's crushing as well. If you're a Tranmere player, waking up every morning, I mean they've only won 2 games this calendar year. They're on an absolutely horrendous run, and the weight of that, I don't know how much that must play on you, because Tranmere have had such battles when to stay in the division, and then they were relegated out, and that was incredible to get back in. George said earlier that football goes in cycles. I think Tranmere will go down, by the way. I think they've got no momentum, and again a bit of a toxic sort of situation. But it's really upsetting. It's disappointing because again, like a fan-owned club and the Palioses, who saved the club from the brink. Mark Palios, ex chief exec of the FA, and Nicola Palios, but then they've come in for a lot of criticism as well, because there's only so far they can take the club, and bringing in other investment hasn't worked. Other plans to kind of modernise haven't come together. Christian Fuchs, the curious appointment at Newport County. You only need to get a couple of wins, right? And it's all you say that, and then teams pull out wins out of nowhere. And then Barrow was an incredible performance at home to Oldham Athletic. And if you caught this one, because Oldham are winning 1-0, and then Barrow equalised on 82, took the lead on 83. Oldham then equalised on 88, and then Barrow score a winner in the 91st minute. And you think that's just crazy, but then they go on to lose the next game at Walsall. So it's just snakes and ladders. It could be anyone. I think Tranmere will go down. And Crawley Town, I don't know if we mentioned that Colleen Kazim Richards, who again, with my Barry hat on, the Coca-Cola kid. If you recall, once upon a time you could win a footballer for your team if you got the right ring pull or something. A Brighton fan won it, and they bought Barry's Colin Kazim Richards, who went on for his the career he had. He's the manager of Crawley Town and is trying to do something now. And I always want to see. We always want to see young players that we know kind of have some success, don't we? But yeah, it could be anyone.
Yeah.
Could be anyone.
Yeah, God, it's a long time since Friday nights at Prenton Park with, John Aldridge and Chris Malkin scoring buckets of goals for Tranmere. To the National League then. You might have seen York City players waiting for the Rochdale game to finish at the weekend. 98 minutes, York are promoted. It's 1-1 between Braintree and Rochdale. 99th minute, Rochdale score a winner. Means it's a showdown on the last game of the season. Rochdale at home to York. And it is just absolutely extraordinary. And, such a case for more than one team needs to get automatic promotion because York City have 107 points and Rochdale have 105 points. And yet it is not a guarantee that they'll both go up. So Rochdale are at home. They need to win. A draw is good enough for York, obviously because they have 107 points, but they also have a goal difference of plus 73, which is mad, but not that it's relevant. I don't know how much you talk about this on the Top 20, George, but the EFL will never vote for more teams to go up from the National League, will they? They just never will do it. It's, you don't vote for what's not good for you. But actually, it feels quite short-termist because if it's easier to get up from the National League, it's not such a big deal to be relegated to the National League.
Yeah. I would agree. I think it's pretty obvious. And also the fact that whenever we see National League teams come up out of the National League, no National League promoted team has ever been relegated straight back from where it's come, which shows you that the top half or the top 8 of the National League is comfortably mid-table in League Two or maybe even better. And Barnet are the latest team who still have a chance of getting into the playoffs this season. And you look at Oldham, who only just lost their chance; they were the 2 promoted teams. You look at how Bromley have got on. Like even teams who do end up returning relatively soon afterwards. Sutton United, for example, recently, or Hartlepool, they have a couple of seasons where they do okay. So from a parity, from a fairness perspective, it obviously makes sense. I mean, there are other nuances and, there are people who feel very strongly against this, too. It's worth pointing out. But this is going to be incredible. I mean, this is a proper, playoff final within a league season, with Rochdale needing a win. They're the hosts. York going into it knowing that they're basically 1-0 up before the game starts because a draw means that they will win automatic promotion. 2 teams who play relentlessly attacking football. You mentioned the points tallies there, but even if you look at the goals scored, 113 goals scored by York in 45 games, 87 goals scored by Rochdale in 45 games. The way that this is set up with Rochdale basically needing to attack from the very first whistle in order to get a win, I mean, it feels like this isn't going to be one of those cagey playoff finals. This could be a really, really attacking end-to-end affair with whoever's behind needing to get a goal to win promotion. It's going to be sensational. I'm looking forward to it on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, actually, a bit harsh on Carlisle and Boreham Wood, who've got 92 and 87 points respectively, and they're not, they're just sneaking into the playoffs, aren't they?
Because only 2 teams come up, it means you get this glut of teams at the top end, and it means that we talk about the Premier League being a huge disparity between the top end and the bottom end, and the Championship too, to be fair. But like the National League's crazy, where you've got the top team York on 107 points, Truro on 31 points at the bottom. Like it's fast.
Yeah. Rob says, do you think he'll finally score buckets? He is referring to Timo Werner, who scored his first goal in MLS yesterday for the San Jose Earthquakes. Let the floodgates open. A 4-1 win against Los Angeles there. So well done, Timo. Alistair emailed in to say on the subject of John Bruin's Arsenal analogy. He was saying about a last day shootout in Scottish football, where Rangers and Celtic were going at it, who could score the most. He missed the killer fact: the injury time winner scored for Rangers was scored by Mikel Arteta, and I was there. He says, yeah, they beat Dunfermline 6-1 to win the title. They were 5-1 up as the match entered the last few minutes. Celtic were 4-0 up at Rugby Park. And then Arteta scored a penalty, and that settled the nerves, I think. So, it wasn't quite as decisive, but good to see Mikel has form here. He knows how it's done.
Yes, the only reason I've hung around to this bit is because you highlighted a Barney Ronay error in your introduction. So
yeah.
Have at it, please.
Alex Hatch, the subject matter, huge error made in today's episode. Hi all. I'm just writing to point out a huge error made in today's episode. At 4 minutes 40, Barney Ronay states,
On your left, you'll see the Etihad Stadium. Understand tickets still available on the door, £10. And there was a kind of, oi, oi, oi. And then he said, and Arsenal fans, on your way home, please just remember to be nice to our staff after you've bottled the league again.
I'd just like to point out that on arrival to Manchester Piccadilly, this is not possible. If you are arriving into Piccadilly from the orientation east, where the Etihad is visible, the Etihad will always be on the right of the train. I sincerely hope you can correct the error at a later date. Regards, Alex. We will. Are you happy with that correction and Ronay suitably admonished? Or were you hoping for a little bit more?
No, that's fine. Just any time he's wrong is a little win for us all. See also Jonathan Wilson.
Well, absolutely.